My name is Sharon Albino, and I am a student at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. I am alongside 4 other students who are a part of Young Invincibles. We will be leading a discussion on mental health among students throughout New York. You'll hear how college students are taking action to support themselves and their communities during this difficult time. Now, our fellow advocates will introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emily. I'm a senior studying political science and anthropology at the City College of New York.
Hi everyone, I'm Lucresse. I'm a first year medical student at the CUNY School of Medicine.
Hello everyone, I'm Maureen Wilson. I attend SUNY until a senior with a double major in political science and Black and Latino studies.
Hi again. So my name is Sharon Albino and I go to John Jay. I'm in my 2nd year and I am majoring in forensic psychology with double minor in Latin American studies and music.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tony Amrachiro. I am a senior also at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, and I major in public administration.
So thank you everyone for introducing yourselves. Now let's go over our evening's agenda. To begin, we'll have an icebreaker. We will then have Lucresse go over the issue at hand. Tony Ann will then present the hashtag Stigma Free New York student-led research presentation, and Lucresse will present our survey results. After, Irene and I will lead our panel of students as well as state and CUNY leaders. We will end our presentation with Emily sharing our advocacy toolkit and action page to improve mental health services. Now we will lead into our icebreaker. So we're going to use Slido for this. If you've never used Slido before, you can also use your phone and look up Slido or go to slido.com and use the code 35817. You can also use the QR code on the screen too. So to do that, you just open your camera app and you put the camera on the QR code and hold it, and it will pop up with a link. And our question tonight is, what is your favorite way to relax? Meditate. I definitely do that in my spare time to relax. I love meditating. Music. Everybody loves music. Cooking. Watching anime. Yes. Reading. I definitely need to read more because I feel like I don't read as much as I should. Playing video games. Dancing. Okay. I definitely like to do dancing in my spare time in my room. Biking. Collecting rare rocks. Okay. Calling a friend. Cooking a good meal. Reading Greek mythology. That's interesting. I've never heard somebody say that's their way to relax. I think that's really cool. Crocheting. Laughing, walking. Television, watching YouTube. Traveling, yes. In the spare time, even even though we can't really. Knitting. And DIYing. Oh my gosh. Like, I like DIYing, like, clothes randomly, like, just ripping them apart and, like, distressing them sometimes. All right, so thank you everyone for your responses and for participating in the icebreaker. I'll now turn it over to Lucresse to provide an overview of the issue.
Thank you, Sharon, for the fun icebreaker. Now I'd like to share an overview of the mental health challenges that students are facing. Across the country, college students have been suffering mentally from the many stressors that come with life as a college student, including carrying the financial burden of tuition and housing, feeling overwhelmed with school, and other personal issues. Many of these stressors have only been amplified by the COVID-19 pandemic and the transition to online classes. On top of that, new stressors such as dealing with the loss of a loved one, financial insecurity, loss of housing, familial issues within the home, lack of access to technology, and many others have been introduced during the pandemic. Now more than ever, college students need more mental health support from their institutions and deserve accessible and affordable mental health counseling. In both CUNY and SUNY schools specifically, students of all different walks of life and backgrounds have expressed that there is indeed a need for improved mental health services at their school so that they may be able to address the issues that can pose as a challenge for succeeding academically. The adverse effects of unaddressed mental health issues can be detrimental not only mentally, but physically as well. Mental health issues can manifest as eating disorders, sleeping disorders, weight loss and weight gain, and many more physical health issues that can then become a new stressor of its own. As these challenges present in students can affect them in a multitude of ways, it is important that SUNY and CUNY institutions supply their students with the variety of resources needed to ensure them success in school and life during this difficult time. There's a lack of mental health professionals across SUNY and CUNY campuses. Specifically, there's a lack of Black, Indigenous, and people of color mental health counselors who are needed to effectively support more students of color who may be disproportionately affected by mental health issues. More funds need to be allocated to increase the access to mental health resources at CUNY and SUNY, and transparency is needed to show how these funds are being used to improve the lives of students. With the implementation of these adjustments to the mental health services in colleges, a student body with a healthier sense of mental well-being can be forged. Now I'd like to hand it over to Tony Ann to present her research findings.
Thank you, Lucresse. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for taking time out of your busy lives to join us for this important issue we'd like to discuss with you. Once again, my name is Tony Ann, and I'll be sharing some research on how mental health affects CUNY and SUNY students. The mental health crisis in our nation is growing at a rapid rate. The stressors of day-to-day life for college students have been greatly increased due to this pandemic. These statistics I'm showing provide a little insight on how it's affecting college students all over the country so we can truly understand what's at stake. So looking on the left, according to the 2020 survey by the CDC, nationwide anxiety is the top pressing concern among college students at 41.6% of the survey, followed by depression at 36.4%. More than 60% of college students experienced overwhelming anxiety in the past year, and over 40% said they felt so depressed they had difficulty functioning. And quite the most alarming statistic is on the right, which says, according to the same CDC report released in August last year, about 1/4 of the survey respondents with ages 18 to 24, which is college students, had seriously considered suicide in the last 30 days. As we see from these statistics I just read off, mental health is a nationwide problem. Next slide, we will see how this affects CUNY and SUNY students specifically. The pandemic has added a significant amount of stressors to the average college student, which has made the finish line of graduation a little blurry. Online school, financial troubles, and losing a loved one are just only few of the stressors that they have to endure over this past year. These statistics truly show that college students are suffering and they need help. So this is the statistics between CUNY and SUNY students. I'm going to start with CUNY. So on the left, according to a survey conducted by Healthy CUNY in spring 2020, 40% of CUNY students reported feeling nervous, anxious, or on edge. In addition, at least 1/3 of the students also reported they felt little pleasure and interest in doing things. They felt down, depressed, or helpless more than half the day. And the statistics are pretty similar on the SUNY campuses. According to a study done by SUNY Counseling Network, more than half of SUNY college students experience a significant mental health issue. Out of the 2,031 participants, 48% showed a moderate to severe level of depression, 38% showed a moderate to severe level of anxiety, and like the last slide stated, 18% had suicidal thoughts. So just for some perspective, the SUNY Counseling Network does a survey every year, and the year before that, the survey was down 6% that students felt suicidal thoughts, so it was 12%. So a whopping 6% of students are experiencing suicidal thoughts, which is quite alarming on a campus. As seen with the statistics, this pandemic has really exacerbated the mental health crisis. Students are suffering now more than ever, and our colleges need to help. In the next slide, we will look into the recent funding CUNY has received and how they've expanded their mental health resources. Last year, through the CARES Act, CUNY was given $5 million to expand mental health services across the 18 undergraduate CUNY campuses. There were a few services that were listed, but some of them include expanding the clinical staffs of CUNY's health and wellness centers and to increase capacity to provide counseling and other services using distance technology. They also stated their goal was to train and certify 120 campus clinical counselors in providing teletherapy services and to purchase new technology, which would make it much easier to access these mental health services. So this funding is a good starting point, but there is so much more work we need to do for mental health justice. Mental health is truly a human right, and students need the extra support now more than ever. So now I will pass it on to Lucresse for the survey results.
Thank you, Tony Ann. For our survey, we wanted insight on how students felt about the services on campus. These questions were related to increasing the amount of diverse counselors and accessibility of mental health services on campus. We received over 100 responses across 12 CUNY campuses and 10 SUNY campuses. Our survey found that 83.3% felt financial insecurity was affecting their mental health, and 69.4% felt that housing and/or food insecurity was affecting their mental health. Having to deal with financial issues, having to deal with housing struggles and food insecurity can significantly impact students' success during college. As you can see, many students suffered more from mental health issues due to financial insecurity. For the question, what is currently impacting your mental health? 75.9% of respondents felt that personal issues were impacting their mental health. 80.6% of respondents felt that online classes were impacting their mental health. And 76.9% of respondents felt that the COVID-19 pandemic was impacting their mental health. These statistics just go to show how much the COVID-19 pandemic and other stressors amplifies mental health issues during this time. The pandemic is a new complication that comes with a variety of challenges that negatively affect students differently, both in school and at home. We also found that mental health was affecting respondents in different ways. For instance, 94.4% of respondents experienced lack of motivation, and 78.7% had the inability to focus on tasks. 63% suffered from lack of sleep due to their mental health. And 92.4% of respondents had experienced anxiety, anguish, or depression within the last few months, which is almost all of the respondents. And as you can see, mental health issues have a multitude of symptoms and can affect students in various ways, which is all the more reason to diversify services in institutions. Adverse mental health can impair academic success and hinder students from reaching their full potential in the world. What was surprising was that while 84.8% of participants were aware of the mental health services at their campuses, only 33.3 actually attended a session and 12.4 were not aware of these services. So students were generally aware that there were mental health services, though there were some who did not. But with such a small amount actually attending, there must be a disconnect between knowledge, accessibility, and feasibility. In regards to our questions surrounding accessibility, over half the respondents noted that they were aware of the advertising done for these services, while about a quarter were unsure. And 65.7% of respondents were also unaware of if the services required insurance. 37.1% of respondents were also unaware of the cost of the services on campus or whether it was free. And it's important because insurance can be a barrier to accessing health services. So students need to be well informed by their institutions. What are the policies surrounding the cost of mental health services? And if referrals to outside professionals would be something to prepare for. In regards to diversity, 3/4 felt it was important to have counselors that understood or affiliated with aspects of the student's background. Given the diverse community of students within CUNY and SUNY, they personally felt that it's important to receive mental health care from professionals who look like them to enhance their quality of care and to be able to engage in comfortable conversation with counselors who will understand the cultural implications of their issues. Additionally, over half the students feel like schools could improve their communications about mental health services using digital outreach, not just the email methods that we currently have. 2/3 of respondents felt that there should be more social media outreach via text, emails, and over half desired for info sessions about mental health services to be available to them. Lastly, nearly half preferred information to be shared through their professors. Here we see that students want to know more about what options are available to them. They also want to be reached in multiple ways to improve their ability to learn about mental health services on their campus. Regarding more outreach, one respondent wrote, "Reach out. As someone who has been struggling with depression and anxiety for years, I can honestly say it's hard for us to reach out in the midst of it. I appreciate when schools reaches out." Another wrote, "If mental health services don't improve, students will not be able to continue in school and more seriously, potentially in life. Mental health advocacy is literally life or death for students, especially BIPOC, queer and immigrant students." Regarding free services, another student wrote, "If it's not already, let in-school mental health services be free. A large sum of people attending city universities are low income and may already struggle to pay for whatever dues they have to the school. Money is a reason why many people don't reach out for or receive the help that they need." Lastly, an increase in accessibility resonated with one respondent writing, "Not everyone knows about the services, feels comfortable taking advantage of them, or even knows how it works. It's not enough for students to know that mental health services exist. Students need to be informed on how it works." Regarding the push for diversity in mental health field of counselors, respondents wrote the following: "Hire qualified teams with experience in various cultural and socioeconomic backgrounds. Push for more diversity in mental health facilities and have more support for counselors of color within these facilities. Be considerate of all and make sure to hire people who are equipped to handle different cases." Additionally, in regards to funding to sustain services and increase capacity, respondents wrote, "A lot more funding to already established mental health services in New York and CUNY, SUNY schools with an emphasis on health services in order to have the accessibility to reach out to students. Expanding funding and hiring more diverse counselors that actually look like and have backgrounds like CUNY students. It's really hard to talk to someone who doesn't understand." Lastly, the federal investments were only a one-time allocation towards mental health services students have been desperately needing. CUNY is made out of 25 colleges, and we need more funding and support from our campuses. By increasing funding to CUNY, this will open up for more trained mental health professionals, more hours, and cut the long wait list students have to deal with. This is not just an investment in CUNY, but in our students' futures. Hopefully, with these survey results, as well as some testimonials from both our panelists And from the survey, we were able to shed some light on a very important issue that is affecting college students, which is mental health accessibility. Now I'm going to hand it over to Irene to introduce our panelists.
Thank you, Lucresse. I'm really excited to introduce our great group of panelists. First, we have Labiba Chowdhury. Labiba is an alumni of CUNY, graduating from City College of New York. She has been involved in supporting and amplifying issues around tuition freezes for colleges and equitable access to higher education. She is an organizer for the CUNY Rising Alliance, where she is supporting efforts around the New Deal for CUNY, which guarantees free tuition at CUNY and investments towards essential supports and programs for college students. Next, we have Jayvon Thomas. Jayvon is a senior at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, majoring in forensic psychology with a minor in sociology. He will be graduating this spring and wishes to continue his studies in the Graduate School of Forensic Mental Health Counseling program at John Jay College. Jayvon is also a fellow Young Advocate with Young Invincibles, a senior representative for the Student Council at John Jay College, and an intern at the CUNY Black Male Initiative program. We then have Lucresse Tato. Lucresse is a first-year medical student at the CUNY School of Medicine at the City College of New York. She earned her bachelor's in biomedical science from City College. She aspires to be an obstetrician gynecologist with a focus on changing and implementing health policies surrounding the issue of Black maternal mortality and mental health. She is also a fellow Young Advocate. We are also joined by Senator Andrew Gounardes. Senator Andrew Gounardes represents New York's 22nd Senate District, which includes neighborhoods in southern Brooklyn such as Bay Ridge, Decker Heights, and Marine Park. Senator Gounardes is a member of the Higher Education Committee and is chair of the Committee on Civil Service and Pensions. He is also an alumni of the CUNY system, having earned his undergraduate degree from Hunter College. Senator Gounardes is a major proponent of increasing college affordability and is a Senate sponsor of the New Deal for CUNY. Lastly, we are joined by Ryan Camire, a CUNY University Director of Mental Health and Wellness. Mr. Camire oversees mental health counseling, clinical health services, and wellness services. Mr. Camire is also a doctoral student at the CUNY Graduate Center, working toward a PhD in social welfare. As a licensed care social worker, Brian has worked as a psychiatric social worker in the areas of mental health and substance abuse treatment, and serves as a consultant for the New York State Office of Mental Health. Thank you all for participating. You'll have 3 minutes to answer the questions directed at you, and then a minute to answer any audience questions. For those who have joined us today, please use the Q&A to ask questions. If we have time at the end, we'll pick out a few questions from the audience. So first, we'll hear from CUNY students, and we'll start with student organizer Labiba Chowdhury. So Labiba, why do you feel it is important to increase the number of mental health counselors across CUNY campuses?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. Yeah, I think you guys have already put forward a really strong case for why mental health is such a serious thing for CUNY students. I think CUNY students are some of the most vulnerable members of the working class, and many of us have dealt with food insecurity and housing instability. I think there was like a study done actually by a Healthy CUNY, the same group that you guys referenced earlier in our presentation, that found that 2 in 5 CUNY students have dealt with either food insecurity or housing instability. So that means if you're a CUNY student, you've either dealt with those issues or you know someone who's dealt with those issues. And when dealing with these harsh economic conditions, mental health services are a necessary support system. There's nothing more disheartening than feeling like you need help from a counselor and then going to the counseling center on campus and finding out that there's a wait time for nearly 2 months, and in some cases even longer, right? We need more support for CUNY students to do better, to be able to overcome these harsh economic conditions that they're facing. So that's why I think we really need an increase in the number of mental health counselors across CUNY.
Thank you, Labiba. Our next question is, what does a future with New Deal for CUNY mean to you? And how do you think it will help students continue their education?
Cool, thanks. Well, I think that, we live in a world where a college education is a necessity. And it's a necessity for like a high quality life, and for success, right? And your wealth or your lack of wealth should not determine whether or not you get a college education, given that it is a necessity. So that's why I think like a New Deal for CUNY is so important, right? Like we're providing students not just with like free tuition, but with all of the resources that they could possibly need to be successful, right? Like enough counselors, staff that are paid properly, so that our professors aren't, getting paid like $4,000 for a full course where they're teaching like 100 students per semester. When they're working under those conditions, how can they be expected to provide us a high quality education, right? When they're living out of their cars and don't have health insurance themselves. So New Deal for CUNY is about like building a stronger CUNY. It's about providing students with the support that they need in terms of advisors and free tuition and financial support. And it's also about making sure that our staff and faculty also get the support they need to provide us proper education. So I think that's why New Deal for CUNY is like so important. And it is also very important to consider when thinking about mental health, because a huge reason we have such a high amount of mental health issues that like CUNY students deal with is because of the economic conditions that I just mentioned, right? Because we deal with housing instability and so on. And maybe if we didn't have to pay tuition and have the burden of paying for school, we'd be able to pay for housing, we'd be able to pay for food and not deal with food insecurity and housing instability. So that's why a New Deal for CUNY is so important. CUNY students deserve the support. And I think this would be a huge win for us, even in the fight for, better like mental health, quality mental health for CUNY students, and like both economically and also in terms of getting more counselors. But yeah, so that's why we fight for a New Deal for CUNY.
Thank you, Labiba, for your engaging and insightful response. So our next questions are going to be for Jayvon. So Jayvon, as a college student at John Jay, can you share what your experience has been with the counseling center at your school?
Sure, thank you. I'm really excited to be here. So I have requested for counseling services last year. The fall, it was a really tough year for me mentally. I had put in a request to see a counselor. I was sent over a consent form. So I waited and I waited and I waited and I waited all the way until the new semester. Um, so we're in, I want to say March, and I still haven't heard anything from the counseling services here at John Jay. So I did a follow-up email asking what, what would the process be, or how much longer would I have to wait to see a counselor? Nobody got back to me. I tried emailing someone directly, and still no response. So I wasn't told in detail the intake process, and I also was not informed on how long I would have to wait for a counselor. So for myself, who deals with mental health issues on a daily basis, especially last year, being home for a full semester online was really tough for me. So not being able to see a counselor and go to my school's wellness center where that service is provided to us for free because we pay out of pocket, and also that's a part of our student activities fee at John Jay. Um, at at this point, I just stopped reaching out because nobody was getting back to me, and it was taking a very long time to um, hear back from the wellness center at my college. I was really surprised at that. Seeing as though a lot of us do struggle mentally, especially during COVID when it had first happened, and we all went into lockdown. So, yeah.
Thank you, Jayvon, for sharing your story. I definitely do think that it's important just to hear just how remote schooling has affected us. So my next question for you, Jayvon, is what recommendations do you have to improve the student experience with on-campus mental health services?
I think Labiba had already touched base on this, so I'll extend more. So, when it comes down to it, when you're looking at John Jay, we are a huge campus. We're not a smaller campus like the 2 years at CUNY. We're a big campus, so there's a lot of students to accommodate when it comes to counseling services at our campus. So extending the number of counselors is something that needs to happen immediately. A lot of our students come in and out of college or online, or they're traveling, right? And outside of college, they also have kids. Some of them have other responsibilities, and so on and so forth. So definitely extending the number of counselors that's currently working at John Jay, and also the number of cases that they can see at a time would help. Also, more social media presence when it comes to counseling. I don't see enough I don't see enough media coverage on social media coverage being done at John Jay to promote the counseling services for our students. And I think that that needs to change moving forward. So for us, we need to ensure that all of our students know about counseling services, whether you're an incoming freshman or a transfer student, right? So these are all important to note because we don't know how students are doing mentally. So I think for all of us, for all students, whether you're at a 2 year, whether you're at a senior college like myself, all of this should be taken into account for because we don't know, you know, who is going to do a lot at that particular moment.
I definitely agree with you, Jayvon, and thank you for your response. Our next question is for Lucresse. Lucresse, as a student of City College, what has been your experience accessing mental health resources on your campus?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Serene, for your question. So I guess my experience has been a bit different because I'm in a small program on City College's campus, and we do have access to City College resources, being students of City College. But I guess my number one thing would be like I too have lack of knowledge going through the undergrad portion of my program. I I'm not really remembering specific times where like the mental health services were explicitly like relayed to me. So definitely lack of knowledge was something that I experienced. I didn't know what I could do. Um, but within my program, I won't really talk much about it because it's not really something for the entire CUNY, which is a problem. But I have been able to be referred to a counselor outside of school. So I'm grateful for that. But I also recognize that that's a privilege because this is not something that other students had the ability to access. But even still, though I am a part of a small program, our program still has gaps in the mental health services that they offer. So with that service that they provide with referring students to outside counselors, there's a very long wait list. I've had friends tell me that they've been on the wait list for like entire school years and that's not really helping you get through school if you're not able to see the counselor during school. So there's definitely still problems there as well. But that's been my experience so far. I know City College does have a counseling center, but I personally haven't heard much of it. They do send emails, but that's been my experience so far. It's been lack of knowledge, really, and just whatever my program can provide.
Well, thank you for that insight, Lucresse, and as well as your experience. My next question to you is, what barriers would you want removed to make the process of receiving mental health resources easier and accessible for all?
Thank you for that question. Definitely the wait time that I was referring to. It can be really long for both for anyone in the CUNY system. It can be months long, semesters long, school years long, and that's not really helping you. Even if the service is there and you can't even like sit down to have it, that's not really helping students at all. So definitely, if the wait time could be reduced significantly, that would be a barrier to accessing mental health services. That would make it easier for students to actually get seen, and that comes with hiring more mental health professionals, because it seems that they're maybe really understaffed, and that's why they're not getting to see everyone who needs help. CUNY and SUNY have tens of thousands of students, and majority of those students are interested in getting seen by a counselor. So to match those numbers, you also need to increase the amount of staff. And while increasing the staff, the demographics of the staff members should be also considered as well. So while increasing the hiring of mental health counselors, also making it a point to increase the representation of Black, Indigenous, people of color within the counselors, so that students have people to talk to that are representative of the student body. That would be another barrier that could be removed as well.
Thank you, Lucresse. So my next question is to both you and Jayvon. In a hypothetical situation where I am a decision maker, either a campus leader, legislator, or governor, what are your recommendations to improve on-campus mental health services?
I'll go first. So I would say more money would should be directed to the college's budget as far as mental health services. Seeing as though now, for my college, I know we're about to open up in person, so now more students are going to have the chance to come back. But however, there still could be some students that are struggling financially. Therefore, some probably not being able to pay tuition fully. So definitely more money in the budget geared towards our mental health services so that we are able to hire more counselors on campus. This is very important because as I have some friends that attend John Jay that do deal with mental health illnesses like I do. So we look forward to going into the wellness center and trying to seek out these services and also more outreach for sure.
To follow up on Jayvon's recommendations, I definitely agree with more funding. And with that also comes the transparency to see where the funds are going. It's one thing if money's being allocated, but how much money is going to which department is also just as important as well. And also more outreach. There are definitely a lot of resources available now, but one big barrier is that students don't know about them. So if colleges could reach out to students in a multitude of ways and tell them what is available and when. I know City College has different wellness classes in Wingate Hall, like yoga. I've been a part of that before, like kickboxing and stuff. But the thing is, like, I think I've heard through it from another person. I didn't really hear from it from the school themselves. So like that's just another example of how outreach could be adjusted so that students are hearing about what is available currently.
Thank you, Lucresse and Jayvon. So my last question to the both of you is, how have the both of you managed your mental health throughout your time in college, especially this year?
So because I couldn't see a counselor directly on campus, I have a support group. So I have a support group of friends, family members that I speak to on a daily basis. And basically, I debrief with them of what I had to go through. And we are there to support each other. That's another thing I meant to mention as well. Having a support system outside of school and work is very important, especially if you're going through a lot and you're not able to see a counselor, or um, you're not giving any referrals, so you're not able to go outside of the school and seek out other resources to help you out. Having someone there to speak to you and kind of resonate with a lot of what you go through, it just helps. You're able to really have a person to talk to, about all of what you are going through. And also just taking a break. I had to really disconnect from social media all the way through. I couldn't just do it for a day. Like after the fall semester ended, I just stopped. I was off of social media for about a month before I came back this semester. So it really helped me out a lot. And I have to say, like today, like I have been doing a lot better mentally. So I really like just taking a break from it all really helped me out.
So one thing I've been able to do is actually keep in touch with the counselor I was given while school was in session. So that's been great to have. I was able to contact her once a week on the phone. But other than that, definitely, like Jayvon stressed, support group was necessary for me. So my study group, my group of friends at school, we've been Zooming and like helping each other through different phases of our courses. That's been making this experience more manageable, as well as just taking time for myself. If I don't feel like, Zooming one day, I can take the time off if it's optional, and just focus on me and self-care, and that includes sleeping properly and getting your sleep schedule right. So that's what I've been doing.
Well, I'd like to thank each of you for sharing your experiences and your insights. And now I'm going to hand it over to Sharon as we hear from our CUNY leaders and elected officials.
Thank you, Irene. So the first question goes to Senator Gounardes. Senator Gounardes, you have long been a strong proponent for investing in higher education as demonstrated by your sponsorship of the New Deal for CUNY. How does this bill further the accessibility of mental health resources, and what are the specifics of this bill?
Great. Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me join you guys. I always love coming onto these panels that the Young Invincibles host. I think it's always great to get to talk about these issues that affect, our CUNY campuses. So thanks for having me on. As part of the New Deal for CUNY, the package that we introduced earlier this year, there is a specific component about supporting the mental health needs of our student body. And it is modeled on legislation that I introduced last year, which would impact both SUNY and CUNY, which really tries to address the really big and widening ratio between students and available mental health counselors. We just heard from our previous panel on some students talking about the long waits they have to go through in order to be able to talk to someone, or just reach out for some resources and for some assistance. And as it turns out, CUNY has more than twice the national average of mental health counselors to student ratio. It's like 1 to 2,400, or 1 to 2,200, I believe, actually. The national average is 1 to every 1,250 students. So we're almost at more than double. What the CUNY New Deal, as well as the original legislation that I put in last year, S844, would do is it would require that the CUNY system go down to a ratio of one mental health counselor for every 1,000 students, which would be better than the national average. And then require them to do so. Basically, what that means is it would require them to hire more mental health counselors and support services on our campuses for our student body. It's for our student population. So that's really a big piece. We estimate, back of the envelope calculations that this would cost anywhere from like $12 to $15 million or so. So it's not an insignificant cost, but when you look at the totality of CUNY's budget, as well as the totality of both the city and state's budget, this is really something that we should be able to afford to do, which is why we're going to keep pushing forward this bill to make sure that our student bodies have the type of support services they need to survive and thrive on their campuses.
Thank you for providing us with this important insight on the New Deal for CUNY. So our next question will be, colleges and universities across New York have just received an infusion of federal funding. How is the state holding both CUNY and SUNY accountable to utilizing those funds to meet the needs, particularly the mental health needs of its students?
It's a great question. And, I'll say between the state budget that was just passed in the beginning of April, which we actually arguably, and in fact, is the best budget for higher education in the last decade under Governor Cuomo, which is, I'll take that as a win. It's not as big a win as we wanted, but it really is the best we've ever seen in the last 10 years. We were able to restore all of the governor's proposed cuts, as well as increase operating aid to the CUNY system. Additionally, CUNY is getting, thanks to the last two federal stimulus bills, the one in December and the one that got passed, the American Rescue Plan in February, they're getting, I believe it's like $1.3 billion in direct aid from the federal government. Now, $800 million of that is directly for the campuses and for academic services, student services, campus services, etc. And the other $500 million of that, required by federal law, is meant to be meant to help support students. So that money is just now starting to get released. And we are waiting for a plan from the CUNY administration to see how those funds will be dispersed. My office has already been in touch with CUNY Central, kind of letting them know that we expect to see a plan, that we want to know exactly how this money will be used to help support students, help fill in the gaps that we saw, exposed over the last year due to the pandemic for, a whole host of issues, but also really what types of investments are they going to be making to help put CUNY back on the right track towards, the level of excellence that we all know that our urban education, our urban university system should have. As part of that $1.3 billion, it should be no problem to be able to pay for the type of student support services, especially in the realm of mental health needs that we're talking about here. Like I said, we estimate it'll be between $12 and $15 million. The state in this year's budget allocated $1 million to CUNY. We asked for 4, we got 1. So we'll take little victories where we can get them. But with all of this influx in federal aid, I think there is a great expectation that CUNY can help pick up the tab for a lot of these needs for this year, to make sure that we are addressing what our students are telling us they need in order to do well during this phase of their lives.
Thank you, Senator. And thank you so much for your response and your time. So our next questions are going to be for Ryan Camire. Ryan, what is CUNY already doing to address the need of more mental health support and resources for college students?
Great, thanks so much to everyone. Thanks for having me here, and thank you to the Senator for his advocacy on behalf of CUNY. Not least of which because we have that $1 million that he just spoke about, which is really, really amazing in terms of our ability to extend our mental health services. So the kind of advocacy that this group does and like the Senator does is really important in all of this. So what are we already doing? That's a great question, because there's the opportunity that we're building on right now to take resources that we've been getting from the federal government, and resources that are sort of COVID related and COVID after related, as it were, to build up many of the supports that we have, and also to see what's working in this current environment and making changes as we go forward to the environment of what CUNY will look like once everyone is back in person. So I just want to give some information about what we've spent some of the funding on and what programs we've put into place already, and sort of give you an idea of where things are. First of all, I just want to say to start with that in response to some of the survey questions before, is that I want everyone to know that CUNY mental health services are provided without cost to every enrolled student. It is clear in my head that we have a little bit of a messaging problem, and we're working on it, and we hear that. But I do want everyone to know that there are services available without cost. You'll have to ask a SUNY administrator how their system works, because I know it's slightly different, but I did want to put that out there. We do have our counseling services available, and they're available virtually at this point. And in the when a return to campus happens, we will obviously transition back to in-person counseling. But we will also probably have a footprint virtually as well, because it works very well for a lot of people who are not able to come into campus or who for some reason don't want to. So that's something we're looking for towards the future. The allocation of funds that we had made to the campuses during the first round of funding, the CARES funding, was allocated to campuses, and they use that funding in a number of different ways. One was obviously hiring to increase our ratios to make sure that the staffing could approach the need requested. Some of it was for professional development of our staff. It was mentioned before about the online telehealth course that a lot of our counselors are going through. And a lot of it was direct support to students. How can we provide additional supports to enhance the mental health needs of our students? So each campus had a slightly different way of dealing with that, but I do want to let you know that there were many hires made of staff to be able to support that. And we're looking forward towards additional funding and the additional stimulus, and of course, obviously, the budget from the New York State budget to continue those hiring practices, and also to keep on the services that we've done. We have a whole host of new virtual and online services that are available. Crisis text line. There's a crisis text line is available to everyone for a texting-based crisis service. You can speak with a trained mental health counselor, texting CUNY to 741-741. 10-Minute Mind is our mindfulness app that's available free to all CUNY students to help reduce stress, increase focus. A couple of new things we're rolling out, and basically in relation to a lot in relation to the COVID pandemic, but also because we know it's necessary. We're working with Talkspace, the online virtual therapy service with our international and out-of-state students, so they can access counseling through Talkspace, because they're not allowed to access those services because of licensing laws in New York. So we're offering that as an additional service. Cognito services, we're offering faculty and staff services through Cognito in order to help them to have the resources necessary to help students to get connected with mental health services, because you see your faculty, you see the faculty much more often than you see all of the administrators. So that's going to be helpful. We have an e-checkup program, which is helping folks to think about their alcohol, tobacco, substance use at this point. So that's another online component. So I know that I've talked probably too long about these programs, but I do want to just stress that we have a lot of things coming out, and we're really excited about how they're going to help our students, and the messaging piece of it really needs to be taken into account as well. So I want to let you know that I'm hearing you about the fact that we need this all over social media, all over everywhere, and not just an email blast that you get 20 of and don't read. I'm a student too, so I know all about that. So I just, I hope that with the information that I have and that I will bring back to the communications team, we'll be able to improve that and get the message out to everyone.
Thank you so much for your response, and thank you for the transparency again amongst that. So our next question is our last question for you, and kind of leads in. So in terms of mental health resources, what is CUNY doing with the additional federal funding that they are receiving to increase access to mental health resources?
Sure, and this is an interesting question because it's sort of new to us that we've had this level of funding for focusing on mental health, obviously specifically mental health, but also what it will look like in a post-pandemic world. And so a lot of what we did with the first, these programs that are set up that I just spoke about, are really trial runs to see what works, what students respond best to, and what people like and can use on an ongoing basis. And then we'll reevaluate based on the second and third round of funding. So we have plans in place to obviously put funds into those things that work. And if our data says, students absolutely love this, we'll continue to maintain that. But also, this also gives us the opportunity to maintain on campus the staff that have been hired. We've increased staff with the original CARES funding, and it would be great if with these next two funding opportunities, we can continue that staff, because the ratio, as the senator talked about and as many have talked about, is far too low at CUNY. So we really want to improve upon that with this additional funding and with the additional funding from the state.
Thank you so much for your time, Ryan. And so now we're going to be taking a couple of questions from the audience. So if you have any questions, be sure to type them in the Q&A section on the Zoom call. I did see that we have one where it's, what advice do you have for student leaders who want to bring this important issue to the college administration? And this question is for everyone up to anyone to answer.
I'll start. I think the place to start, if you want to bring it up at your individual campuses, it's been a while since I was a CUNY student, so I might get this wrong a little bit. But every campus has a university. I don't want to say university senate, a campus senate, where you have student representatives, you have faculty representatives, you have administrative representatives that kind of come together to talk about issues facing the campus. Every school might operate that body a little bit differently, but that I think would definitely be a good place to empower the student leaders that we already have on campuses to make this an issue, and certainly put it on each individual administrator's radar, so that they have to answer for it and explain and lay out exactly what they're doing for the students in their charge. That would be my one top of mind suggestion and recommendation, but I'm sure that there are other leaders here who might have other things to add to that.
I will just add to that there are so many moving pieces at CUNY and so many people involved, and I think that from the bottom to the top, advocacy at every level really works. CUNY obviously has administrators at the top of each campus who make a lot of decisions about the finances and funding of mental health. There's also the central administration. There's the elected officials and who control a lot of our budget and the city, New York City, which is where we live as a university. So I think that any form of advocacy that people are interested to do can take place on many levels and with many different people. Especially as well the faculty. I mean, this is obviously a student-run organization, but the faculty-run organizations are having similar conversations as well. So I think that's a good point to tap into.
So the senator would be correct. We have, it's not called campus, but we have something called University Student Senate. I serve on student council at John Jay, so I know a lot of the president and vice president have meetings monthly with University Student Senate, and we have made it very vocal and clear that mental health services should be at the top of the list at all of the University Student Senate meetings, because a lot of our students are requesting for counseling services. And this is something that is urgent, that needs to be handled. And also, as a student leader on campus, a lot of times I will reach out to students directly myself, asking whether or not they have received any services, if they've reached out for some. And if some have gotten back to me saying that they have not, heard of anything, then so because I represent the seniors at John Jay, I'm a senior rep. So any seniors that are having issue with that in particular, of course, I refer back to the president, and then she'll give me the office's number of someone who I could contact directly, and then I just proceed on from there. So a lot of times, as a student leader and serving within student government, we have a lot of connections to different offices, to different people that work within these offices on John Jay's campus, so that we're able to reach out to them directly ourselves, so we can help the students out the best that we know how. Sometimes it may take longer, which is unfortunate, but that is the process, and we're trying to improve that. We have a new administration coming in at John Jay for our student government, so that will still be the key in working towards bettering our mental health services on campus.
I would definitely agree with the sentiments that were shared. Definitely reaching out to the student government on campus. They are there for students. They're there to hear students out. So if you and a certain number of students who feel a certain way about a situation can organize and organize yourselves to present the issue to the student government, they will be the liaisons between the student body and the chairman and officials of the schools to get your desires across.
Thank you all for your responses. So another question that we have, it's also for everyone. What are your recommendations for students who wish to advocate for this issue to city and city elected officials?
I'll jump in there first, because I think that the student community has already done a phenomenal job over the last 2 years, elevating their voices and making sure that people in government know that they have to answer to the students in the CUNY system about what they're doing to make their university better. I know we haven't won every single fight that we've set out to win, or some of the wins have been smaller than we want so far, but the level of student activism that I have seen since I got to Albany has been tremendous. And it's groups like Young Invincibles, it's groups like the CUNY Rising Alliance, it's work that the University Student Senate has been doing on each individual campus, and so many others. I would just say keep it up, because now people definitely know that there are concerns coming from our student population. And don't forget, we're talking about a total of nearly 500,000 people who are getting educated at CUNY in all the different degree programs. It is definitely on our radar that we have to do better and we have to do more. So I would say whatever you have been doing, just do a little bit more. If you have not yet been actively engaged in activism yet, this is a great time to get into it. Look online, find your state assembly member, find your state senator, find your city council member. The city council and the state legislature both vote on budgets that impact CUNY. Make sure they know that you live in their district. Make sure they know that you care about, or that you go to school in their district. Make sure that they know that you care about how much funding is getting allocated to our university and for what purposes. And make sure you tell them that you're going to hold them accountable with your vote based on how they act with their votes. It's easy to do. You can call them, you can email them, you can drop by their office, you can send them a tweet, you can send them a Facebook message, you can send them an Instagram message, you can send them, I don't know how many elected politicians are on Snapchat or whatever else, or TikTok, I'm not, but if they are, send them a snap, send them however you feel most comfortable communicating. Find your local elected officials and let them know who you are and what you care about. And like I said, the student community has really made tremendous strides in terms of their level of activism. We can all do more, we can all do better, but I think we've done a lot of great work so far.
I would say join an advocacy group, like Young Invincibles. So one of the things that I did last year was that I looked into this program to join, but because I had such a packed schedule, and also I was newly elected onto a student government in college for the first time. I didn't want to overload myself, so I waited until this semester to come into the program, and I have to honestly say that I really love everything about what we are doing and how we are helping students out the best that we can. Advocating for your respective campuses and then also advocating for all CUNY campuses collectively will hear from elected officials that we as students care about these issues, and it's very important to us that these issues are solved as soon as possible. And that's one of the big things when advocating for change. Sometimes we will have to wait for change, which is, a downside, but at the same time, we're here to exact that change. And joining an advocacy group, like Young Invincibles, will help you look deeper into the issue and also do more research on your own time. You'll get to get a little bit more of a feel through of what's going on in your own campus. There may be some things that you do not know that's going on at, let's say, City College or Hostess Community College or John Jay that you didn't know about before until you start doing your own research and contacting offices across the campus. And then you start to realize that, okay, this is an issue, this needs to be handled. This is an issue that needs to be handled. So I have to say it gives you a different outlook on the problems in which is going on each in respective campus, wherever you are going to school at. So that was something I would do.
I would agree, but definitely with what Senator Gounardes said with the outreach from students, with the emailing, organizing different clubs and organizations on campus with the same goal to create sort of like a platform amongst themselves. And lately what I've been seeing with different, campaigns on social media for other causes, they've been forming these already pre-written emails, and all you have to do is like fill in your name and the message is the same, and you just basically it's spamming officials, so like they see that people want to get this done in numbers, and that's something that can be really quick and efficient, and it's a way to get to the elected officials inbox in a matter of seconds. So that's something you guys can do in organizing on campus. Also running for positions on campus as well, running for leadership positions. If this is something you're really passionate about changing and you believe that you are gonna be the person to do that, definitely run for those positions. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there, because you could be the person who sparks that change on your campus and CUNY-wide, SUNY-wide. So don't be afraid to run for student government, club leadership positions, presidents of club leadership positions, stuff like that, so that you can get your goals across and be a spokesperson and like a representative for your student campus. So
Thank you so much for all your responses again. I do agree that I think kind of pushing students to speak to their elected officials, kind of sending a message and creating a group and joining groups, I think that's really helpful. And it's a start to begin with. The next question that we have is for Senator Gounardes. What misconceptions would you say people have about the New Deal for CUNY that are making it difficult to move through the state budget?
That's a good question. Um, I don't think that there are misconceptions so much as I think that we launched the New Deal earlier this year. It has a pretty hefty price tag. Let's be honest. We're talking about hiring lots of support services and professionals for students, lots of additional faculty. We're talking about eliminating all tuition, as well as making a lot of significant investments into the physical infrastructure of our campuses. It's a lot of money that we think is necessary to fully fund the university at every level and in every way that we think is important. We made a down payment on those investments this year with some of the budget allocations we made. But at the same, also, CUNY did get significant federal support from the last two stimulus bills. $1.3 billion in the last 6 months or 5 months, as I kind of laid out earlier. So when we're faced with a very, very difficult budget season, and we know that CUNY got some additional help from the federal government that other institutions in our state did not get as well, or were not eligible for, I think there was a broad consensus that while we know we have to do more for CUNY in the years ahead, right now CUNY got a lifeline from the federal government so that we could take some of our own state dollars and help make some of the investments that did not get a federal lifeline right now, but also lay the foundation to make sure that we are prepared to make the necessary financial investments in the years ahead. That's kind of my behind the scenes look and feel for how things went down this year. If I had to point to one, I think misconception is the wrong word. Maybe it's too strong of a word. I think there is still a conversation that people are having that they don't fully recognize or understand the importance of some of the things we're trying to do in the CUNY New Deal. And it's understandable why that might be the case. If you yourself are not a student, or if you were a student a long time ago, or if you were a student and you didn't have to deal with working 2 jobs, maybe taking care of someone at home, maybe worrying about where you're going to get your next meal from. You know that a lot of our students are food insecure, or you didn't have to worry about all these other things. You might not readily understand why it's important that we talk about mental health counselor ratios. Like if you've never needed to talk to a mental health counselor, it wouldn't be obvious to you why other people might need to talk to a mental health counselor. If you went to school 30 years ago on a full ride, or when school was a hell of a lot cheaper, it might not dawn on you why it's important that today we are looking to help make it more affordable for students to stay in the CUNY system or go to college generally. So I think that we have to just do a better job at large explaining why the different provisions and planks of the bill are necessary and what it'll do for the student body that we currently have, as well as the students that we're hoping to educate in the future. And that just means that we all have to just talk more about our personal experiences and why this is important. It's not that people don't understand or that they misconceive it. They just have never had to understand it or experience it themselves. And so we have to educate them a little bit better as to why it's important that we do this.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your response and informing us about a little bit about behind the scenes and what's going on with the New Deal for CUNY. So our next question and our last question will be for mainly students, but also open to anybody. If there is one piece of advice you'd give to college students on navigating mental health resources on their campus, what would it be?
Um, I would say walk around your campus. A lot of students are on the go a lot. So what ends up happening is they'll come to campus and they'll leave after class is done. If you can, take a couple of minutes out of your time to walk around campus, ask around to those who work there where the counseling services are located at, and then you'll be more familiar with the office. So once you go in, you don't feel as nervous as you know you may have before. I would say, just take a walk around. And I was that student that came to college, that came to school, did my work, went to class, came home, and then I repeated that cycle my entire first year in college. And I understand, you're nervous at a new campus, but at some point, just explore before you think about leaving. Just explore around, see where everything is at, so you're more familiarized with how the campus is set up. I think when students do that, they feel more comfortable and wanting to see somebody, and also asking for help. It definitely it relieves stress levels down.
To add to that, I think students can try to find it within themselves to try to reach out and ask for help when they do need it. It's not something easy to do, um, firsthand. So to try to, ask for help and tell someone all these things that you're dealing with when you don't even know who this person is in the first place, it's not easy. But that's really kind of the only way you're going to get help is if you seek it. So you also try to take that in mind. And if you do feel comfortable going to a professor and telling them, hey, I'm dealing with this, um, do you know where I can get help? I think that will take you very far if you try to do that. That's something you can take action on yourself. You don't have to wait for your school to um, do that. That's something you can take action today with. So definitely try to do that if you can.
So thank you all for your responses. And I just want to say thank you to all of our panelists here for providing us with knowledge on the work that you are all doing to address mental health accessibility on CUNY and SUNY campuses. Now I'm going to hand it over to Emily for our closing remarks.
Thank you, Sharon. As we conclude this evening, we hope that everyone that attended this town hall is leaving with a better understanding of how important it is for college students to have mental health accessibility on their campuses. Above all, we have to take a stand on this urgent matter because mental health care is a human right. We must continue to reimagine a future where our mental health needs are being met to the fullest extent. Now more than ever, students deserve accessible and affordable mental health counseling. Have your voice be heard. Show your support by using our advocacy toolkit to spread our message. You can scan the QR code seen here or use the link that will drop into the chat. And by calling on your elected officials to put our message and these initiatives into tangible legislation. This point is the first in our call to action, which I will have a slide up at the end for you all to access via QR code. But here we are calling on legislators to support NYS S00844 and A00302 NYS to expand the number of mental health professionals across CUNY and SUNY campuses. This requires at least a ratio of one clinical non-student mental health staff member per 1,000 students on all SUNY and CUNY campuses, and for state colleges and universities to update such ratio every 5 years. Presently, the national average of mental health counselors to college students stands at 1 to 1,250. As of October 2020, the staffing ratio of mental health counselors to CUNY and SUNY students is approximately 1 to 2,400. This is nearly double the recommended amount. This stark imbalance exhibited here affects the accessibility of mental health counselors for so many students. We need legislation to solve this issue. Secondly, legislators must co-sponsor the New Deal for CUNY, NYS Bill S4461 and A5843, which includes increasing the number of campus mental health counselors. To effectively manage the mental well-being of students in their journey through college, state lawmakers must increase its investment in mental health counseling. By guaranteeing at least one counselor for every 1,000 students, with a priority for hiring more Black and Latino counselors, we are one step closer to giving students the professional help they deserve. Thirdly, we must increase the number of Black, Indigenous, people of color counselors by developing a program that grows a diverse counselor pipeline to effectively support students of color. The diverse student bodies of CUNY and SUNY schools deserve to feel represented when dealing with issues related to their mental health. Additionally, prioritizing this much needed support to students from all backgrounds will destigmatize seeking help. Our final point is that elected officials must hold SUNY and CUNY accountable for their allocation of funds. By demanding more transparency on how CUNY and SUNY use their funding for mental health resources, we ensure that investments are being made to increase access to services and additional resources and support. And lastly, here's our call to action. We urge you all to send our action page to your elected representatives today. By doing so, you are supporting these significant efforts to increase mental health resources across CUNY and SUNY campuses. Please scan the QR code or use the link that will drop into the chat. We also want you to be advocates on your campus. If you are interested in being a part of this advocacy, please fill out this campus pledge and we'll send you more information. We'll send you more information. You can scan the QR code found here and we'll also paste the link in the chat. As we close our last night of the Step Up New York virtual advocacy series, we would like to get your feedback about the event. Please take a moment to fill this out. These surveys allow for Young Invincibles to hear directly from you and continuously make improvements. You can access this by scanning the QR code or by clicking the link that we'll put in the chat. Furthermore, I want to end tonight by thanking Young Invincibles for providing us with the opportunity to be advocates on this very important matter. I also want to thank my team members, Irene, Lucresse, Sharon, Tony Ann, and our amazing ambassadors, Ashley, Rosemary, and Tristan, for their unwavering advice and support. I also want to thank Marissa and Melanie for their guidance on making tonight's town hall the best that it can be. Lastly, we want to thank you all for joining us this evening. Have a great night.